Hello, friends, and welcome back to another action-packed episode of the Nintengems podcast, the Nintendo podcast where we dig deep on games both new and old. I am the first of your two co-hosts this episode, Brayden, and on the other end of this video chat, I have...
It is I, Connor.
Hello, Connor. Welcome to Nintengems. We're here to talk about some video games, and we have a good one.
Yes, primarily a single video game for this episode. A single video game encompassed in a large, long-standing franchise, so we'll inevitably touch on a few of the different entries as well, but we just got a new one very recently that is all abuzz in the Nintendo world.
Absolutely. Yeah, the game definitely has some pedigree, and we have some history with the series as well. So we're looking forward to talking about Monster Hunter Rise for Nintendo Switch. But before we jump in, hey, we are pretty active on social media, at least we attempt to be. So make sure that you go ahead and follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, Twitter, just to stay up to date on what we are playing, when our new episodes will drop, and get in contact with us. I just want to give a shout out to Griffian as well, our first ever Discord member. We had a great chat talking about Xenoblade and stuff, so I'm looking forward to talking with more of you as time goes on. So yeah, hop into our Discord, check the show notes for all our links.
Yeah, come have fun. We're playing a lot of Monster Hunter.
That's right.
Go figure.
All right. So on that note, let's roll right in. Like I said, we're going to be discussing Monster Hunter Rise for Nintendo Switch. It came out on March 26th of 2021 this year. So just a couple weeks ago at the time of recording, Connor and I both were basically day one adopters. I think it took a day to get Connor's copy to him.
And about a week for me to summon the courage to get started. Yeah. Because I knew pretty much what I was getting into beforehand.
Right. Yeah, if you're familiar with Monster Hunter, you probably know what he means. If not, we are certainly going to.
We are here to help.
Yes, we are definitely here to dive into the weeds of Monster Hunter, the series, Monster Hunter Rise, the game, and everything in between.
We are here to be your monster helpers.
Ooh.
Where do you want to start?
I think we should start with kind of just covering the series as a whole, and maybe in particular its appearance on Nintendo consoles. But I guess I'll kick off its history, its lineage, with Monster Hunter for PlayStation 2. It came out in 2004, and it really laid the groundwork and the core gameplay out for what is going forward for the rest of the series. Its core gameplay loop, you know?
Yeah, it really hasn't changed much in almost 20 years since that first game.
Right.
And there's been sequels and spin-offs, dozens of sequels and spin-offs across platforms, across consoles and portables.
Right.
And truly, largely, the core gameplay, like Brayden said, has not changed very much at all since the PlayStation 2.
And there's much to be said about the gameplay, which I think we have both positives and negatives to discuss here in this episode, but
for certain,
we'll get to that. Monster Hunter's first appearance on Nintendo consoles was Monster Hunter Tri for the Wii. It was the third entry. I take that back. The third numbered entry into the series.
There you go.
You know, kind of following the mainline core games, because at that point, I do believe there had been a number of spin-offs.
Yes, and that's. So Monster Hunter, as like a franchise, I would compare mostly to Pokemon, is a pretty good analog, because it's in the way that like Pokemon has mainline entries and like spin-offs that play the same.
Sure.
Monster Hunter kind of has the same thing, because there was Monster Hunter on the PS2, and then Monster Hunter 2 came out on the PS2 in Japan, and then there were like half a dozen updates, I guess, kind of like extra versions. Like there was Monster Hunter Freedom, Monster Hunter Freedom Unite, Monster Hunter Freedom Unite 2, and these were all for the PlayStation Portable back in the day. And so there were like a lot of different updates and like sequels, and in the same way that Pokemon entries are like new games in the Pokemon series are kind of iterative, the games stay the same at their core. Like it's still the same battles and such, but each game kind of introduces like a new mechanic. Like X and Y had the Mega Evolutions, Sword and Shield have the Gigantamax stuff, things that don't really appear in the next game, in the next entry.
Don't get me started.
I know, right? And also, like each new Pokemon game adds a whole new slew of Pokemon. Each Monster Hunter game adds a dozen or so new monsters to hunt, and some monsters return or don't. All like the flagship popular ones come back. And so that's kind of the trend for each Monster Hunter game as it's come out for the past almost 2 decades. Just new monsters, some don't come back. A few new mechanics get introduced for each new game, and
Hmm.
sometimes those don't come back. Just one of those like iterative franchises, I would call it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Monster Hunter Tri or Monster Hunter 3, the third numbered Monster Hunter game,
Hmm.
came out for the Wii. And that was my entry into the series.
Yes. I kind of want to divert our perspectives here for a moment because I have very clear memories of you being on the Wii playing this strange game full of icons. I thought it was chess with it can look pretty garbled if you don't know what you're looking at.
Hmm.
But then I saw these huge, gorgeous monsters that you're fighting in groups of 4 people. Like, what the heck? This is crazy. So I dipped in a couple years later. I got into some Monster Hunter games that later came out for the 3DS and
Hmm.
stuff like that.
And you
But
started with 4 Ultimate, right? Monster Hunter 4?
that's right. The 2 games that I've played now is Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, which, as Connor said, it's one of the improved editions, quote unquote, of the core Monster Hunter 4 game.
Right. 4 already came out in Japan.
Hmm.
And then they released 4 Ultimate, which is just an updated version of 4 that we actually got in the US, fortunately, I suppose.
Yeah. And then I also played Monster Hunter Generations for the 3DS as well, which is strange that it wasn't a numbered entry. It very much felt identical to Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. It,
And this is another weird naming convention thing. In Japan, that is known as Monster Hunter XX or Monster Hunter Double Cross. So it's
huh,
like a sequel to one of those sequel thingies because there was a Monster Hunter X, I'm pretty certain.
right.
And it was kind of like a greatest hits for all the Monster Hunters. Like it was most of like the old monsters coming back into the
Sure.
roster. And so we got it as Monster Hunter Generations, one of those
Right.
like kind of generic subtitles that denotes its history, I suppose.
Right.
Good stuff.
And yeah, Monster Hunter Generations, it felt very iterative of Monster Hunter 4. Having, I didn't change consoles or anything, playing both on the 3DS felt very similar. We'll discuss some of the gameplay features that do roll over from game to game. But yeah, so that's my kind of limited experience. I did dump, easily a couple hundred hours, I'd assume, between the 2 games. But you are certainly a bit more veteran than I am to the series. Is that the right word?
Uh, I suppose so. You could call me a series veteran. It's been around for so much longer even than I've been around it. But I mean, at this point,
Mhm.
yeah, I've been with Monster Hunter for over a decade, which is
Yeah.
very weird to think about. Because 3 came out when I was in 8th grade. There's me dating myself.
Wow.
But yeah, Monster Hunter Tri for the Wii. I remember it was the first time I'd heard of Monster Hunter because it was the first time it came to a Nintendo console.
Sure.
And I remember there was lots of Nintendo Power coverage, like in the magazine.
Interesting. I don't recall that explicitly, but I
Really?
believe you.
Yeah, it was a pretty big deal because, like, I mean, it's a big historic franchise,
Yeah.
first time coming to Nintendo, and first like major marketed and published U.S. release, really for the whole series,
Sure.
and obviously for the Wii, which at that time was seen as like this huge, accessible for everybody, fun
Mhm.
for the whole family console. This like really core, like hardcore gamer kind of game
Uh-huh.
coming to it, like randomly from PlayStation was pretty weird and wild and unheard of. But regardless, it was getting a lot of buzz and it looked and sounded fun.
Mhm.
At the time I was like, this looks like Zelda. And so
Oh, no.
well, I mean, yes and no, and sort of. Was I right? Uh, so I got it and got my, pardon me, kiddos, got my ass handed to me
Mhm.
quite a bit for quite a while. This is a very hard game. This is a very hard, challenging, tests your gaming skills kind of series. And
Mhm.
so got my ass handed to me on a silver platter a few times, bucked up to the challenge.
Mhm.
And I guess that's worth noting too. This is like one of the first games that like turned me into that kind of gamer, that like really enjoys a
Yeah.
challenge and like likes to climb over the mountain, tooth and
Uh,
nail, claw my way through and just
absolutely.
conquer something.
I can totally see that.
Yeah, this was one of those first things, one of those games that gave me that kind of drive and that love for challenging games. And so
Mhm.
I bucked up, beat the first monster, the Great Jaggy, and then I put like something like 300 hours into the game.
Yeah.
subsequently.
The rest is history.
And the rest truly is history. 3 got another weird pseudo sequel for the Wii U called Monster Hunter 3 U, Monster Hunter
Mhm.
3 Ultimate. Then, yes, I also played 4 Ultimate for the 3DS. Took a break on Generations. I didn't really give it a try. Monster Hunter World came out for these next gen consoles, Xbox One and
Yeah.
PlayStation 4 exclusively, which was another weird iterative entry. But the biggest evolution gameplay wise that the series saw for a long time. And so I dipped my toes into that for a little bit, but because it wasn't on Nintendo stuff and I didn't have one of those consoles at the time, I kind
Mhm.
of skipped it for a long time. So Rise really is my first return to the franchise since 4 Ultimate for the 3DS. So it's been a while. It's like riding a bicycle, you know?
Absolutely, it is. I feel like that's a pretty good intro, our personal experiences with the series, and maybe we can start moving a little closer into what makes Monster Hunter Rise what it is.
Sure. Well, I mean, we kind of got to get into what makes Monster Hunter what it is still, too, you know?
Yeah. So I said some words earlier that I said
Just a
some words
few.
that really meant a lot to me, I think, when I first started playing Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate. And that those words are gameplay loop. I don't
Mm,
think that concept of a game having a gameplay loop had ever quite sunk in with me as hard as it did with Monster Hunter,
hmm
because I do feel like it is almost nothing but a loop. You know what I mean? You're doing one thing so you can do the next thing. You're doing one thing so you can accomplish and but you have to keep going to keep getting the next thing.
Sure. I mean, gameplay loop is kind of like it's sort of a catch-all like game design term. Like every
Yeah.
game kind of has a gameplay loop. It's like whatever the action that you're doing is over and over to complete the game. Like there can be
Mhm.
an end to your gameplay loop, you know,
Yeah.
an end state, a goal. But you're right,
Sure.
with Monster Hunter, it is a little different.
So to put some words to said gameplay loop, you are a monster hunter, believe it or not,
Okay.
who is usually on the rise. You know, you're starting from the bottom now.
Was that on purpose?
That was not on purpose, and I apologize. But
Whatever.
you're a monster hunter on the
On the
rise.
runs.
This is true for almost all the games, I have to say.
Mm,
And so you start with some easy assignments. You have to go slay some small monsters, gather some herbs, and deliver them, and that's usually it.
hmm
And then, as you kill these monsters and gather these herbs, you start to find resources while you're out in the field, and you can construct better armor and weapons.
hmm
Before you know it, you are fighting larger and larger monsters who, upon defeating these monsters, you use the materials that you carve from these monsters to then create stronger weapons and armor.
To fight bigger and better monsters.
Exactly.
And it just keeps going.
I mean, at the bare bones, I have to say that's about it. And it's awesome along the way. Every fight is just one big boss fight, you know?
hmm
It's a crazy cool concept. And again, this gameplay loop is tight. You know what I mean? They have nailed it and refined it over these almost 20 years.
Now, monster, for those that don't have a visual for this series whatsoever, by monster, you
Ah,
don't mean like mummies,
no, that's awesome.
Frankenstein's monster. Like, what are we hunting here?
That's so
Is this
funny.
spooky or is this like
No, we are in a pretty wild fantasy setting.
they're all like loosely like kind of Western fantasy, kind of tribal, kind of Conan the Barbarian esque, somewhat.
Ah,
You
wow,
know,
very good.
but each one kind of like having a loosely different theme. This one, Rise, is kind of like feudal Japan themed, which
Mhm.
is really cool. Like some of the characters are like shinobi and samurai kind of stuff, Bushido stuff. But
Yeah.
yes, go on about the monsters though.
Yes, so these monsters are not Frankenstein and the Mummy. They
Mhm.
are, I mean, I just need to say the word dragons. Think dragons
Definitely
and
dinosaurs.
dinosaurs. Yes, that's
hmm
that's an even better kind of catch-all for what these monsters really do kind of seem to represent. They are
hmm
massive. They start out anywhere from like twice your character's size to
10
eventually
times.
10 times. Not quite Shadow of the Colossus level if, you're
Well,
thinking that big, but
that's getting to somewhat spoiler territory for some of them, but for in some of the games you do encounter elder dragons, which are quite larger than life threats, but
mhm,
those are kind of different flavored challenges.
fair enough, fair enough.
And this hunting that we do, these hunts that we go on, is it like real life hunting? Are we using like rifles? And what are we doing? What are we hunting these monsters with?
Yeah. Yeah. You are using one of as the series has moved forward and developed, more weapons have become available, but they are divided up into these classes. Would you call them classes?
I guess so. At this point in Monster Hunter Rise, there are a little over a dozen different weapon types. Each weapon type has like dozens and dozens of different versions of it that you can make, that you can
Mhm.
craft using these parts, these monster guts and monster scales and bones that you acquire from these hunts. You can construct different versions of these weapon types. So you can have a sword and shield, and you start with like the generic iron sword and shield, but by
Mhm.
the end of the game, or I don't know, hour 50 or 100, you might have this like cool dragon sword and shield that's like
Mhm.
red and uses fire elements and stuff, and it's
Literally made from the bones of a dragon.
yeah, it's awesome. But
And the
yes,
designs are phenomenal. They
oh, they're so
historically,
cool.
the armor designs, they
I
have to
mean,
be designed by, like, New York designers or something like
I
that. They're
mean,
crazy.
pretty much, and like that's the thing is like you said before, the monster designs, these cool ass, gorgeous, elegant
Mhm.
dragons and dinosaurs and just huge, scaly
But
beasts that are so
and
cool.
giant frogs, big
Yeah, big bears,
bears.
big bugs, just like
Uh-huh.
cool monster designs through and through.
Anything you can imagine Godzilla fighting is kind of like what you're up
Yeah,
against in Monster Hunter, I feel like.
definitely. Yeah, very kaiju inspired a lot of the times.
Mhm.
But these monsters, they're cool designs, and when you hunt these monsters, you use their parts that you carve off of them to make these weapons and armor. These weapon and armor designs are also cool as hell as well because they're based on the monsters. You know, they kind of
Uh-huh.
like emulate the theme and the colors and the shape of the monster. Not like
Yeah.
literally like you're not like wearing the head of a dragon,
Mhm.
but it's an armor design that like suggests it. It's very cool.
Yeah, if the dragon had a fin on its head, your helmet might have a fin on the helmet, and then,
Mhm.
if there's some kind of furry patch on its elbows, your armor might have a furry patch on its elbows. It's just
Yeah.
simple things like that that really make the world come alive, make it feel like these parts are valuable to create this
Mhm.
armor and stuff.
Yeah, and they're like trophies too, you know? You hunt enough
Absolutely.
of these monsters and you get outfitted in them and, like, get their weapon, it feels really good to accomplish.
Mhm, mhm.
And I feel like the armor designs, like you said, are kinda like New York fashion tier stuff, like, even those who are not gamers, let alone hardcore enough gamers for Monster Hunter,
Uh-huh.
can find something to appreciate because those costume designs are just are gnarly.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
to return to the topic of the weapons, though, there are over a dozen types, from your basic sword and shield to a big lance that you can use. That is,
Oh,
Braden is Lance Gang.
Lance
Uh,
Gang.
the lance is pretty much like twice the length of your character. I'm a hammer guy. That's the thing is like beyond the regular sword and shield. That's just kind of like your generic normal sword dude,
Mhm.
sword and board. All these weapons are like 2 to 3 times the size of your character. Like they're big ass hunks of bone
Mhm.
and metal that you just kind of swing around and whack these huge monsters with, and it's oh
Yep.
so satisfying. The hammer, the clubbing part, I don't know, the mallet part of the hammer is like the
Yeah.
size of your character, and you just swing it around, smack the
Mhm.
monster in the head, knock it out, knock.
Massive damage. It's
Oh
awesome.
yeah, it's so satisfying. But so these weapons range from like your average hammer, lance, sword and shield, long sword, to these weird, wild designs that they've come up with over dozens of entries in the series. There's a switch
Mhm.
axe, which is an axe that transforms into a sword. There's a charge blade that is a huge sword and shield that you put together and changes into an axe. There's
Mhm.
an insect glaive, which is this bow staff that you kind of do acrobatics with, but also comes with this insect helper that flies around and gives you like elemental status boosts.
Dude, it's
There's
weird.
It's wild. There's a bow gun, which is just like a crossbow, and then there's a
Mhm.
heavy bow gun, which is like a machine gun.
Yeah,
There's a
I feel like
regular bow, an arrow, which is again twice the size of your character, so it's like this long bow that It's all awesome. It's so cool. It's larger
Yep.
than life, and every weapon is so unique and
Hmm.
requires such a different skill set and mindset. There's just so much diversity to the gameplay, let alone with each monster that you're fighting. Each monster is completely unique in how they attack and their behaviors in the field and how they respond to you. But especially with each weapon, like each hunt can feel truly unique
Hmm.
depending on what kind of loadout you're going out with. And so I suppose circling back around to the gameplay department, the meat of the experience. In pretty much every Monster Hunter game, it's structured the same. You enter this tribal village as a hunter. Usually this village is being like antagonized by some legendary monster that only comes back every 100 years. Like verbatim, pretty much every Monster Hunter game is that
Literally
plot.
the same story every game. The plague, the
Yes.
rampage,
The
the
Apex.
virus, the
Uh
apex. It
yeah,
is back after its slumber, and
right.
it is attacking our village.
It's Final Fantasy kind of territory where it's like a different village each time. Like all the games are story-wise are unrelated, but they do have some
Yeah.
of the same monsters. So yes, you're a fresh young buck hunter coming to this village that they hired you to take care of their monster problem. As you start your journey, you start with different ranked quests. So when you're first starting out, you start with rank 1 quests, 1 star,
Mhm.
which are like kind of just regular gathering missions, slaying smaller monsters.
Yeah.
And then as you complete those quests, accept those assignments and complete them, you unlock 2-star, 3-star, which are bigger and harder monsters progressively. So you sort of have some freedom in like what order you want to tackle these quests, but they do unlock as you go. You unlock
Mhm.
more varieties of monsters to hunt, and they do get a lot harder and a lot bigger as you go. But also as you go, your equipment gets better, and obviously your skill will get better too.
Yes.
You trial by fire, truly.
That's what I wanted to say, is that these classes really do require some dedication.
Mhm.
The gameplay in Monster Hunter is not a smooth experience, I have to say. Like you said, almost all of the weapons are heavy, and so these attack animations can take seconds to get through. A second at least is a long time in these intense battles, and so you really have to pay attention to what you're doing. Even if you're using dual swords, which I believe
Mm,
are the fastest weapons in the game,
yes.
if you get started on a combo facing in the wrong direction, you're gonna end up way over there. The monster's gonna nail you from behind, and it's a mess. Like Connor said, you'll get your butt kicked the first 10, 20 hours you're playing Monster Hunter before you really get into a groove. And each class requires you learning that groove as well.
Right. So that's kinda touching on, I guess I didn't touch the gameplay necessarily, more so like the structure and the framework it's surrounded by.
Hmm.
But you're absolutely right. So like the gameplay, what I like to classify Monster Hunter as, and what I've learned to over the years, is it's the hit it until it dies genre, and don't get hit it until it dies and don't get hit genre. Like before Dark Souls came out and the advice was get good, that
Hmm.
like Monster Hunter was there before, and yeah, get good, but even before that, it was hit it until it dies and don't get hit. That's your advice for any beginning hunter.
Yeah.
And so I mean, at its core, it's an action RPG,
Uh-huh.
you know, but like way, way, way more emphasis on the action. It's real time fights. You are kind of like Zelda. I wasn't
Yeah.
too far off when I was hopping into it. You're fighting these big monsters in real time. It's interesting to describe Monster Hunter these days because there's so many things that take so much inspiration from it, namely Dark Souls.
Mm.
Because Dark Souls is almost more of a household name than Monster Hunter these days.
Interesting. I could agree with that.
So like almost an apt point of comparison is just like imagine the boss fights in Dark Souls, these huge massive threats that can kill you in a few hits if you're not careful, and that you have to time your dodges and your blocks very carefully and attack when they're vulnerable very carefully. And they have
Mhm.
these huge health pools, and they're just kind of like damage sponges, so you just hit them over and over and over and over and over for
Mhm.
sometimes for a very long time until they
Yeah.
die. So it's that framework, but it's just that. It's just the boss fights practically.
Uh-huh.
Without all like the adventuring and dungeoning in between. it's just a strange experience having started with Monster Hunter before Dark Souls existed,
Mm-hmm.
that like that example, like it feels like going backwards, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I will as a more contemporary example, Zelda Breath of the Wild also definitely takes inspiration from Monster Hunter, especially with kind of the other half of the gameplay, which is all the resource gathering and the crafting.
Mm-hmm.
When you're going off on these hunts, you get plopped into like this big, huge map, this environment, this wild, this wilderness,
Mm-hmm.
and you're free to explore this big map kind of at your own freedom. The monster is like hanging out somewhere in the field, and you have to go
Right.
find it, track it down, and go beat it up. But there's bountiful resources. There's smaller monsters. There's wildlife that you can hunt and gather resources from. There's fauna, flora, mining outcrops to get metals. I was kind of blown away. I remember when like starting with Monster Hunter 3, like it really there wasn't really a game like that that felt like such a natural environment,
Uh-huh.
before.
Everything contributed to the puzzle.
Yeah,
Everything was a piece to like make this one complete package.
right.
And
Natural beauty everywhere. And you're right. Like, I mean, you could like pick the flower and use it as a material for potions. You could
mm-hmm.
hunt those deer over there and cook their meat.
Mm-hmm.
Like that kind of resource gathering was pretty new still. Back then at least. Obviously now in a post Breath of the Wild world, things are a little different. And Monster Hunter as a series really tries to grow with the times, which is, I guess, also where I'll connect those dots with what you just said, Braden, and also with what you said earlier about Monster Hunter for the PlayStation 2, the original.
Uh-huh.
All these weapons, all these weapon types, the lance, the sword and shield, the hammer, the greatsword, have been
Mm-hmm.
around since the first Monster Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you've got this series that's several decades old, kind of like Pokemon, you've got these purists.
Yeah.
And you can't piss off the purists by changing it too much.
Mm-hmm.
So these weapon movesets have not changed a lick in these 2 decades. So
Wild.
however clunky they felt back on the PlayStation 2, they
Mm-hmm.
feel just as clunky now, for better or for worse. And
Wow.
they don't change it because that's just what we're used to.
Uh-huh.
But that gives them more opportunity with these new weapons, the switch axe and the insect glaive,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of switch it up, offer new things. While I'm on the gameplay, I suppose I'll touch on too. One thing that they kind of, for Monster Hunter Rise in particular, to bring it home to the present day, the big new gameplay feature is literally rising through the air.
Yeah.
You get what is essentially this grappling hook that has several uses.
Yeah.
I mean, you're sighing. What?
Tell them what it's called. No, wire bug.
Why? Wire bug. That we'll get to the. Braden and I have some qualms with some of the naming conventions in this game, but for all intents and purposes, it's a grappling hook.
Yes.
But that being said, the environments are also bigger and more open than they've ever been. So you can like grapple onto walls and run up walls and run across
really
walls.
good.
It's awesome.
They did really well.
You can just kind of grapple up into the air and just kind of swing around like Spider-Man from nothing, but just kind of like make a big leap and a huge jumping attack on the monster. And along with that, you can use this wire bug to ensnare the monsters, and then you can ride on them and use them to attack other monsters. Those are the main big new gameplay changes for this one, I'd say. Anything you want to add on, or anything I'm missing?
No, because like you said, each game kind of added, I feel like, a big feature. One, I think Monster Hunter 4's was like that you could actually mount the monsters, or was that Generation?
That was 4. You could, it kind of introduced height and like jumping onto monsters, and you can get on their back and like attack them on their back. You couldn't ride them around like you can in this one, but yeah, that was a new thing, was just like mounting them at all.
Yeah, it's interesting coming off of that as like my base knowledge, because I started with sort of quote unquote mounting, and now we really are riding. I don't know, I feel like I've seen some real progress.
Definitely. Something that I will say I miss, this is somewhat of a tangent, the big thing for Monster Hunter 3 was underwater fights. There were like aquatic monsters and monsters that would go like amphibious ones that would go from land to sea. And I gotta say, as far as like infamous water levels and swimming in video games goes, it worked pretty damn well. It was
Really?
pretty cool.
That's
And
interesting.
I do kind of miss it because I feel like it also inherently like allowed a lot more variety for the monsters too. Like you got
Sure.
like some really cool like leviathans.
Mm-hmm.
I miss it a lot. But I digress somewhat. There are no underwater fights in Monster Hunter Rise, for better or for worse. No Lagiacrus. We still have the Royal Ludroth.
Yes, we do.
I'm
That
for
was the
those
last monster I killed before we started recording.
nice. For those
Yep.
that are not in the know, these are the names of some of the monsters. The monsters have absurd names, also like Pokemon.
They really do. Some of them are like, I don't know, normal, I guess. Like Royal Ludroth. Like
Mhm.
Ludroth is pretend it's an animal name and a Royal Ludroth. Like that makes sense. But some of
Right.
them are like Yon Kutku or Gas Harag. Like some of
Is
them are so strange.
Do you say Zenogre or Xenogray?
Zenogre.
Okay.
Well, what would you what? Huh? What do you say?
I mean, I think it's Zenogre, but I don't
Okay,
think
good.
so. I kind of touched on some of the new gameplay aspects that were introduced to Rise, but something else that they attempted to introduce for the first time to the Monster Hunter franchise with just painful execution is voice acting.
I'm just amazed this was the first time.
I might be a little wrong. I think it was in Monster Hunter World, but it was not nearly as bad as this.
Why do you hate it so much?
It's
Like
bad.
I
It's
I'll be
bad.
perfectly honest. I have my subtitles on, and I don't always play with audio. And Elder Fugen, he is a ridiculous character. I don't like his animations. I like the way he
They're
looks.
all ridiculous characters.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I've railed on the Nintendo of America localizations before on this
Hmm.
podcast. That's no secret, is that I'm not a fan of them generally. But
Right.
this is like there's a directorial like failure across this game.
Uh-huh.
Like conceptually, this is like I've said before, this game, Monster Hunter Rise, is feudal Japan themed in the
Hmm.
like Edo period stuff, like samurai, like Kurosawa film, like samurai stuff. If there's ever going to be a Monster Hunter game that allows you to have the language in Japanese, it's this one, and you
Yep.
can't. You get the American accent, English voice acting, and it's infuriating to me.
Uh-huh.
And it's one thing that like the voice acting from the characters is what it is, but the main thing that I despise, and I'm
Oh.
sorry that I'm being so negative, and like I've been playing Monster Hunter Rise on the TV primarily, like almost
Okay.
exclusively, and so sometimes my roommates are hanging out, and
Hmm.
I also live with like artistically inclined friends of mine. So structurally in the game, when you accept a new quest and you hunt a new monster for the first time, it plays like this intro cinematic for the monster, and that's a series staple. They do that every time. They call them like ecology videos, like where you kind of like it shows a video of like the monster like stalking its prey, and it kind of shows
Yeah.
you like what it does and
Really
what its
cool.
gimmick will be. Very cool. But in this one,
Oh,
they
I'm cringing. I am
you
cringing.
explain it then. You explain it.
I'm dying, dude. Yes, they
Defend
have.
it. Justify it. I dare you.
No, I don't think I can. First off, it's ruining my screenshots because, like you said, those ecology videos are very cool and very cinematic and like make for great screenshots. They have a narrator reciting some strange poem about these monsters. Don't what is there more to it than
It's
some
trying to
strange poem?
Yeah, it's clearly trying to be like a haiku.
But it doesn't do. Is it actually a haiku? I didn't count any syllables and stuff, but
I mean,
like
it certainly doesn't always follow that, but I mean like it's just kind of like a
I get it.
samurai
I get
film
it.
trope, you know?
I
Like
get it.
it even has like the grainy film
Mhm.
footage filter
Noir
over it.
kinda thing.
So it's like just like these ecology videos. It shows the behavior of the monster and it shows it doing what it does out in the wild and showing like what it's gonna do to you. But it has the narrator performs these terrible poems in his terrible
Mhm.
American English accent. Not a lick of Japanese culture or like nod whatsoever, but
Uh-huh.
they're trying so it's and these poems are like Dr. Seuss shit.
Dude, they're
Censorship if you
worse
want.
than that. Like,
It's like
I swear they are some, like, 2nd grade rhymes.
right. And the voice like here's my impression. The humble monster stalks its prey, whether it's in the night or in the day.
That is
Like
literally, that's got to be a quote. I can't
I'm
confirm or deny, but I think that's probably a quote.
that is the writing quality is of that same quality. It's second grade quality, and the narration itself is caught between being a Hollywood movie trailer and reading a storybook to second grade children.
Yep.
It really cannot find its way. And again, if there was ever going to be a Monster Hunter game that let you switch the voice acting to English, it would be this one.
Japanese.
And you can't. You cannot. Yes, sorry. That you can switch the language to Japanese, and you cannot do that in this one. And it is infuriating. It doesn't make the game hard to play. I love Monster Hunter so much, so dearly, but goodness gracious.
It's funny that you, when you said there's one thing that infuriates me the most, I didn't think you were going to say the ecology videos. I thought you were going to say during the match, playing online with other people, like your avatar will like yell things like, watch out, or don't mind if I do. I gave my guy a British accent, and so he's really obnoxious.
That's kind of badass.
Yeah, he sounds fun, but like I swear people have to be so annoyed by him when I'm carving monsters and I'll help myself, thank you. And
oh my goodness. I mean, yes, the voice acting across the board, like I said, like Monster Hunter didn't necessarily need voice acting. Sure, maybe it was inevitably going to get it someday, but it's not about the plot anyway.
Right.
It doesn't need quality voice acting. It would be nice if it had it, but you're right. Yeah, an unwelcome addition was that your hunter has voice quotes during your hunt that they just kind of spout randomly as like cool one-liners, I guess, is the intent. Fortunately, that is an option they included, is that you can set the frequency to which your hunter uses these lines.
That is interesting.
Generally, broadly, the options are kind of nice. Like the language thing is like the biggest thing that's not an option, but truly anything that they've changed over these games, like gameplay or control wise, you can alter in the options. Like in this one, you can see the damage that you do to the monster. You can see like the damage numbers. And that's actually a very new addition to the series. And so I turned it off because I'm not used to seeing it. And I
kept
don't
it
like
on.
to. Yeah. Good for you. I think it's distracting.
I want to know how big my hit was.
There you go. Good for you. But yeah, so you can turn this voice acting off, but like, yeah, it's terrible. It's just bad. Like all the rest of the voice acting, my guy is like gruff, is like,
oh yeah,
I think he's trying to be like edgy. He literally, when you use a silk bind attack, he literally goes, "See you in hell."
Oh my gosh.
It's so weird. Does he say stuff when he's sharpening his weapon?
Now's my chance. Yeah, yes. Something like that. Yeah. I'll take this opportunity.
My guy, he's like, my weapon's getting blunt. But the worst one is, where would we be without these stones?
What? When you mine something?
For those in the audience, to sharpen your weapon, you have to use an item called a whetstone, which is just like a sharpening tool. And you have to do that a lot throughout a hunt because your weapon gets dulled. That's a mechanic in the Monster Hunter series. Fun fact. So you're sharpening your weapon pretty often. But yes, one of my guy's quotes that he says when he's sharpening his weapon is, "Where would we be without these stones?"
I don't like your guy.
I hate my guy.
I
don't like my guy either. And man, the voice acting is just not the move. And I know I've railed against it in games on here before, but you got to agree with me on this one for this game.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
The move.
It's pretty. I am not a huge judge of voice acting, because like, I mean, Jake, for example, he watches so much anime and stuff. Like he has a great like radar for voice acting and stuff. And
sure.
You
and I
as
am
well.
An actor.
You are like you have literal schooled knowledge on the subject, and so like, you know, generally I'm just like, I don't mind, but yeah, this one, it gets pretty rough.
So something I heard you mention was that these hunter quotes, these things that they shout, that other players heard them, and that's something that we have not touched on. That is like a Monster Hunter staple from day one. Monster Hunter is about multiplayer.
Heck yeah, dude. Which is not my cup of tea generally. I am very much a solo kind of gamer. I played Monster Hunter 4 and Generations by myself.
Mm.
Cuz I was for the most part I was working like a food delivery job. I was in my car, flipped my DS open, whenever I could, and I was by myself. So, I'm enjoying Rise for multiplayer reasons. But
Ah.
you've been around the block before.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I've been playing Rise exclusively solo so far,
Oh,
just to
wow.
get reacquainted with Monster Hunter. That's kind of always how I do it for each of the games. Is like I dip my toes back in single player for a while, get acquainted, and then hop into the multiplayer quests and start
Mhm.
getting with other people. But yeah, so like this is historically a multiplayer focused series, which is kind of like where the lack of story focus and like the lack of
Sure.
story polish kind of comes in, is because it's about the gameplay and like the grind and like you said, the
Mhm.
gameplay loop.
Yes.
But yeah, typically, ideally, you're facing these huge monsters with three other people with their own weapons, and you're all whacking at it, and it's kind
It
of
can be
awesome.
mayhem. Yeah,
It
it's
very
nothing short
chaotic.
of awesome. If I'm not mistaken, this four-player co-op concept, it goes back to the original Monster Hunter. Am
Oh
I
yeah,
right?
you are correct. The PlayStation 2 had online capabilities.
Yeah. Same with Xbox. It's kind of funny, like, having to reframe your gaming generations. We're just
Mm,
so far from the original Xbox and PS2 now.
sure.
But,
Yeah.
yeah, those unfortunately for the GameCube, we did not really have much of a online presence, but
Ooh,
PS2 and
Fantasy Star
Xbox
Online.
were hey, I said much,
Okay, cool.
but yeah, the PS2 and Xbox, they were already doing that four-player thing.
Yeah, and I mean, for what it's worth, that Wii Connect 24, baby. It really
Uh-huh.
Nintendo Wi-Fi, really strong stuff there,
Got
connecting
you
with
through
three
those
other players,
rough 8th grade days.
something like that. And I mean, honestly, there's not much more to the multiplayer notion than that, but we forgot to mention it.
So you mentioned that you haven't played multiplayer yet in Rise?
Correct.
That's fair enough. I have spent quite a bit of time online actually, just
Okay.
because I've deprived myself of that experience in my Monster Hunter playing in the past. It's very convoluted, and I'm curious if it's always been convoluted, or if it's something new to Rise, or what I'm missing here. I've found a way that works for me personally to
W-
play multiplayer wise, but
What is convoluted about it? What are you having trouble with? What are you settling on in Rise?
my big struggle comes between finding a lobby to play in with people that I will play multiple quests with. I can't,
Hmm.
or if I just want to drop into a quest that's already in progress, a quest of my choosing that other people are also playing. But once that quest is over, I'm kicked back out to my own lobby. I'll never see those people again.
Aw.
That's what I've been doing. I've been doing the drop in method. I find it
Mhm.
very efficient. I have fun playing with the people. But, I mean, I want to get into the lobby system, but it seems as though it can be very obtuse and not very efficient either.
Hmm. A few different thoughts on that. Normally, at least in my experience, historically, since Monster Hunter 3, the lobby system is more so how it goes.
Mhm.
You kind of like pick a lobby that's like, we're doing these quests,
Right.
and you join, and then those are the people you're with, and they can quit whenever they want, and somebody else can come back in. It's just like a room of
Yeah.
four people, that can enter and exit
Sure.
at will. But I think the second one that you're talking about, where you just like drop in mid quest, is
Mhm.
is pretty new to the series. It might be new to Rise in particular. I'm not really sure. It kind of reminds me of the new multiplayer system that we talked about a little bit back in the Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles episode. Am I wrong?
Wow. No, that's pretty spot on, actually. I mean, I have to assume they've really streamlined the
Mm,
matchmaking process with this drop in thing. It's really interesting. I have only been denied a match less than a handful of times. That means that there's always a group of players playing the very quest that I wanted to play. I guess I can't wrap my head around, how many millions of people are playing this
mhm.
game at one time or whatever, but I'm pretty blown away that I've never really failed to find a match.
Sure.
Even for the non-required quests, even
Mm,
like an obscure kill 20 of this small monster, which nobody wants to do, but
right.
if I did do one of those and I found 4 people, like, I don't know,
Mm.
it's I've not been let down by it.
Well, I mean, it does seem like a good idea. Like you said, streamlining is a good word for it because, like, sometimes you want to like just roll through all the quests with a group of hunters and like just kind
Mhm.
of experience it all together, get through it. And then sometimes you're like, I need this one shell from this one monster to finish the last piece of the armor set, and I just need
Mhm.
this one thing. So you just like want to drop into like the Rathalos hunting
Yeah,
quest and kill a Rathalos real quick and get that material and then be on your way. So
right.
that kind of makes sense. I mean, it's good that you can just kind of drop in, get what you need, and get out. If I were wanting that one Rathalos piece, like have to drop into a lobby, fight with the other 3 people on what quest we're doing, be like, can I please do the Rathalos quest? Because that
Mhm.
is how it used to be. Is like,
Yeah.
you kind of had to suggest a quest to do, and everybody kind of had to agree on it in the lobby.
Well, and I think that's part of what my kind of confusion and just general grumpiness towards it is that the drop in, as we've been calling it, the drop in option is totally separate from the lobby option. Like, it's 2 different locations. You can't talk to the same person to both drop in or join a lobby. Like, it treats it as 2 very different functions. And so
Interesting.
yeah, I don't know. I just it keeps it convoluted in a way that seems unnecessary to me.
Hmm.
Maybe that's just me, and maybe I'm dumb.
I can't speak too much to it because I haven't experienced it yet. But again, I guess my best justification would be, like I said, like just 2 different functions for them. If you're
Yeah.
wanting to like play online like multiplayer with people and have that
Mhm.
experience, you can do that. Or if you just like need to mop up a quick quest for your own reasons, you can do that, I guess.
Okay, but I'm going to elaborate on this very point though,
Hmm.
but keeping on the convoluted theme. Why are there 2 of everything? Why are there 2 quest desks? And why
Uh,
are there 2 separate, like, hub worlds? Like, one that's considered, like, the multiplayer hub world and one that's considered, like, the solo player hub world? It has literally the same shop, it has the same kitchen, it has the same house, it has the same item box, it has the same quest board, it has everything identical, but it's literally just in another location. And I understand that's historically Monster Hunter as well,
yes,
because,
that
I
is that
remember
is the short answer.
yes, I understand that is precedent as well, but it's convoluted and unnecessary. It's certainly not user-friendly for
Intuitive.
new players.
It's not intuitive. It is obtuse and
Right.
archaic, yes. But and like you said, it's carried over from the older games. So I'm gonna connect a few dots. I kind of mentioned like how like the world building and like how the maps and the environments really make you like feel like you're in this like environment and world and
Mhm.
whatever.
Mhm.
The same goes for like the hub, the village that you're in. Like they're
Yeah.
extremely detailed. There's stuff going on like all around. The village is like alive. And that's kind of
Yeah.
part of it. That's kind of part of the tradition is like the village has like a bunch of different rooms and NPCs that you can talk
Uh-huh.
to and they all have their functions. And that's kind of just
Mhm.
like to make that world functional and like livable and believable and
Yeah.
breathing.
I'm okay with that.
But well, I mean you don't have to be because it does make it archaic in execution. But
Uh-huh.
that's also kind of why, also over the years, they've developed it in a way, like we've discussed before outside of the podcast. It is a little redundant to have all these different quest counters and like all these different NPCs and stuff because you have your house in the village and you can access all of it from inside your house. You don't have
Mhm.
to run up to the shopkeeper, you don't have to run up to the quest counter, you don't have to run up to the blacksmith.
Mhm. One NPC consolidates it all.
Right, which is functional and elegant solution.
Mhm.
But it's just kind of it's caught in the middle. It's caught in between like appeasing to the purists and just like I just want to get in, develop, forge my new armor, buy a weapon, and get out and go on the new quest. And those that are like maybe new to Monster Hunter and like want to explore the village a little bit and get acquainted,
Mhm.
and here's all these cool new things to look at.
Right.
But it's
Yeah.
another one of those things that's like caught between convention and ingenuity.
I'm of both minds because yes, the housekeeper who gives me access to all of the side projects that I can, undertake is certainly useful, but it's still cool to go down to the buddy plaza where all your cats and dogs live, which, we can
Yeah,
talk about our buddies. But and see what's new. The shop expands or something like that, even though you can access that very shop, like we said, from your house. It's cool to see, useless to be there.
right. Everybody wins. I guess. Sort of.
Yay.
So that's why there's 12 quest counters, sort of. You mentioned buddies. It's not super
Buddies.
important. I mean, kind of. The whole buddy
The
system.
dogs are new, right? Palamutes?
Buddies. Yeah, they're pretty new.
And yeah, they're not that big a deal, but
Historically, through Monster Hunter franchise, to kind of emulate that multiplayer experience in single player, you can recruit these NPC partners called palicos, which are just like these little like cat guys. Not like Mario 3D World cat Mario cat
right.
guys. These are literally just like anthropomorphic little cats that are
Yeah.
very cute and very charming and wear like little armor and carry around these like
Cat
little clubs and
size,
stuff.
though, too.
Yeah, and they're cat size as well. They function like as your hunter buddies on the quests, and like can also help attack and distract the monster during your hunts. So it's just kind of a way to like provide additional help on your solo quests, kind of emulate the multiplayer experience a little bit.
Mhm.
But yes, like you said, in Rise, you have your Palico, your little cat guy, and you also have this dog called a Palamute
Yeah.
for some reason.
Which these stupid naming conventions.
Oh my
Palamute
god.
is only Kimura's name for the dogs, like for the trained dogs. They have like another name for what the species is or something like that.
You know, that makes sense because the palicos are also felines. Like felines is the species, but palicos are like your pals.
Canines. They're
And then
canines.
Malinx is canines. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, whatever.
Well, I think they're a really good addition in that you can actually ride them. They're kind of
Mm,
small, but they really help you cross these like kind of wide open areas much, much faster than you ever could in a past Monster Hunter game. You can
right,
also like heal and sharpen your weapon while you're riding the Palamute, which is a massive game changer. In the past, you had to
right,
hold still to sharpen your weapon. So you had to find like a
right.
safe hiding spot. And so when I say game changer that you can be on the move while you're sharpening your weapon, it's pretty big.
It is. It's definitely like a convenience thing.
So I'm a Palamute fan.
Yeah, they're definitely a welcome addition. That goes along definitely with like the streamlining of the Monster Hunter formula. Because you're right, like
Mhm.
you would have to like sit still and sharpen your weapon, or after the monsters run away, you just like take a break, stand around, chug all your potions or whatever. But yeah, you're right. Now you can like pursue the monster, and while you're pursuing it, you can heal up,
Yeah, yeah,
sharpen up,
yeah.
charge up all your stuff, and get back to the action like pretty quickly, which is very
Mhm.
nice.
Yeah, you kinda mentioned, like, the streamlining of the Monster Hunter formula over the years, which absolutely has been occurring, just
Hmm.
game on game. I have a couple things that I kind of just I don't agree with the direction necessarily that they took it. I don't know.
Oh,
And the first being the whetstone that we've been discussing. It's how you sharpen your weapon. Am I wrong that that used to be a disposable item, whereas now in Monster Hunter Rise, you can use it as many times as you want?
you are correct. It did in older Monster Hunter games. It used to be a resource that you got from the environment, and you did have like a limited amount. You could buy more. But yes,
Mhm.
they were a finite resource, sort of. You
Right.
you could run out during a hunt.
Yeah, I kinda liked that. I thought it added
Hmm.
some pressure to the situation, but there obviously no complaints always having a whetstone on hand. Similarly, where's the paintballs? In past Monster Hunters, the map was blank. You didn't know where the monster was hiding, essentially, and it's not hiding, it's out in the open, but you don't know where in this huge open space the monster is. And so if you find it and then it runs off, you can lose track of it again.
Then you have to
But
hunt down the monster.
hey, exactly. But you could use this item called a paintball, where if you threw it on the monster, you could then track it on your mini map, which
Mhm.
I thought was really kind of cool. It made the hunting experience feel just, that slight bit more realistic or something, just more
Definitely.
interactive.
Sure.
Whereas
Dynamic.
here in Monster Hunter Rise, all the monsters that are on the map are visible to you from the start of the quest, which it was kind of a bummer. I don't know. It just seemed a little too watered down, a little too easy, maybe too streamlined.
Definitely. I agree. And I'll get into the monster tracking in particular, but like broadly, I do want to address this the whole streamlining problem as it
Uh huh.
is like again appealing to like purists and newcomers alike and like staying true to the formula but also like evolving with the times is like
Mm
I don't know, the like with the whetstone thing, with the weapon sharpening thing, it's
hmm.
kind
Mm
of like, yeah, I mean, why not make it an infinite resource? Because you like it's just kind of redundant for it to be finite. Like, I mean, you always
hmm.
have to
Right.
do it, and like whetstones were a dime a dozen anyway. You always had 99 on you anyway. It's not like
Mm hmm.
it was ever truly finite. So let's just make
Sure.
them infinite. Why not? But then it's like, you know what? Why sharpen it at all? It just kind of gets in the way of the hunting. Let's just take out like sharpness.
Mm
And
hmm.
it's and you know what? Why stamina anyway? We're just like getting in the way of the hunting.
Yeah.
It's like with all these like streamlining things, it's a slippery slope and it's a really
Sure.
tricky precipice that they've been on for a long time now with
Mm
each
hmm.
entry in the franchise. And same for monster tracking because like I remember in Monster Hunter 3 a complaint I heard from like my few friends that also picked it up that and like were
Mm
turned off by it that it was too hard was like they couldn't find the monster. They
hmm.
would run around the map for like half an hour and just like not be able to find it because the monster
Which
moves
is
around.
right. It's a kind of a fair complaint.
Yeah. If you're not attuned to the experience, then if you're not acquainted, then yeah, it can be very frustrating and very newbie unfriendly, but just kind of even if you've played a long time and like for whatever reason the monster's not in the area that it's normally in, you're like, Well,
Uh
guess
huh.
I gotta go run around." And so streamlining it conceptually, yes, good idea. Something that I will note and that you missed out on and I almost missed out on. In Monster Hunter World, the one for PS4 and Xbox One, it was a lot cooler. There were no paintballs, but what you could do is there were monster tracks and like monster droppings and evidence around the map. So you would
Now
find
that's cool.
very cool, very intuitive, and still keeping with like the monster hunting thing, and but not
Uh-huh.
making it like so obtuse that you just like are blind and have to run around.
Mhm.
Yeah, you would like
That's
find the
pretty
tracks,
genius.
and then you would
That's, like, genuinely the natural evolution of, like, the hunting experience is, kinda tracking them down. Like, yeah, that's really cool, and it
right.
makes perfect sense.
I will say once you found the tracks, it would kind of make it automatic. Like you had kind of like how everything's sort of like bugs, like every functional like technology thing is just like a special bug. You had this
Uh-huh.
special bug that when you found the tracks, it would like kind of draw a path to the monster sort of automatically. Like, but I mean,
Yeah.
like, it's following the tracks. It's like you can follow them with your eyes anyway. It
Yeah.
was it was definitely a more elegant solution, the paintballs, and
Mhm.
more natural solution than them just being on the map
Mhm.
automatically.
Right.
All that to say, I don't know why they didn't do that.
Mhm.
Maybe to make it more user and newbie friendly. I'm not really sure. But I
Yeah.
agree, it's a little silly that they're just like on the map, you know where they are for some reason, and you just run up to
Yeah.
them with no surprise or no dynamism whatsoever.
Right.
That is a good point.
And before I let you kinda get into your nitpicks, do you want I do have one more and kind of I feel like it's very much in the same vein as, the missing paintball, or I
Mm,
feel like it's gonna be the next feature to go, actually.
okay.
And that would be capturing the monsters.
Ooh.
Um, I want to discuss that with you. So you are a monster hunter, and in general, you're gonna end up slaying the monster. You're gonna kill it and carve it and take all its materials. But you do have the option, and some quests require you to capture the monster alive, which involves setting traps and lures, and then you have to hit it with some sleep bombs to put it to sleep and knock it out. Doesn't that just sound convoluted? That's
It
all I'm saying. I have more fun killing the monster. I get more materials killing the monster.
you
I
don't
don't understand capturing
y-
entirely.
you don't understand capturing because you don't get more materials from killing the monster. That is the trade-off. This is just another Monster Hunter series staple that's been around forever. Since the
Mhm,
first game, you can either hunt the monster, kill it, slay it, or you can capture it. That's always how it's
mhm.
been. And the reason it is convoluted and obtuse is because it's always been that way. And if they change it too much, then it's just not the same, or they should just do away with it entirely. Might as well, just one of those things.
Yeah, yeah.
But the trade off has always been you would think you get more materials and more rewards for hunting the monster and carving it and like
Mhm,
whatever parts of the monster you broke, you get those things. But
mhm.
historically, you get more rewards for capturing it after the quest is over.
Right.
Obviously, you can't carve parts off of a captured alive monster, but
Mhm,
after the quest is over and you get like these rewards from like the village, you get
mhm.
more typically. And there's a higher chance of you getting the rarer materials as well. That's the trade-off is that
Interesting.
because also it's worth noting that hunting the monster, killing it until it's dead is easy
Yeah.
compared to the capturing process, which is a lot more delicate. It's a lot like Pokemon. Again,
Mhm.
you have to wear the
Wow,
monster
yeah,
down
that's so true.
to very low health, and you have to watch for the signs for it to like limp away kind of and show signs of weakness. And
Mhm,
you wait until it's weak. Sometimes it'll run away and go to its nest and fall asleep, and then you set a trap and it falls into the trap. You lure it into the trap, and then you throw bombs on it, tranquilizer bombs,
mhm,
and then you beat the quest. So it's riskier and more delicate because it's
mhm.
like I said, it's easier to like get carried away and just keep bashing the monster and accidentally
Yeah.
hunt it when you're trying to capture it.
Mhm.
So capturing is like a little more of a hurdle, a little more tedious of a process, but it does reward you with better items. Is the
That makes
concept. You're right, the
Mhm.
capturing process is a little archaic still, but yes, there that's all that is.
It makes me feel a little better that I'm rewarded more for capturing. I do think my beef comes from playing online. I drop into these quests, and
Mm.
we're just going to
Oh.
town on this monster, and then all of a sudden someone pops a trap in a trank bomb, and it goes to sleep, and I'm like, oh, quest is over. No carving for me.
Oh.
Like, yeah, like
No, that's awesome. That's great. What's terrible is when you're doing a capture quest and everybody's going to town on a monster and the
okay,
monster doesn't get a chance to breathe and it dies before
yeah.
you can do anything.
That's true. That's totally fair. But no, I'm
No,
just
The,
like,
the,
I wanna kill the monster, and then they're like, "Nope, sleepy time
the,
for monster."
no, that's the hunters you were with knew what they were doing. That's a good thing. You should be
Okay,
thankful.
fine. Fine. Alright, yeah. But that those were some of my just kinda, like, strange, little
Mhm.
just it shows some of the series' age, but also it feels just everything we talked about, paintballs and whetstones and capturing, those are all incredibly deep staples to the series.
Mhm.
Like, you know
And
what I
just
mean? Like
and they're creative conceptually. Like
Uh-huh.
Monster Hunter 1 for the PS2, like those are unique mechanics in a game that
Mhm.
like really weren't seen before. Having to maintain weapon sharpness. Like you don't have to
Yeah.
do that in Zelda. The Master Sword is evergreen, you never have to worry
Mhm.
about it being dulled. You never have to worry about stamina,
Right.
you know?
I do love this game, though. Monster Hunter is fun. It's difficult. I'm stuck being a lancer. I have tried the
Really.
gun lance, and I was a dual swords guy for Monster Hunter 4 and Generations. So, I've tried a couple different things, but like the insect glaive, you kind of touched on how obscure and like strange it is, but it uses like the juices of insects that you find in the world around you to like cast spells or something like that. I don't freaking know. It just seems like way over my head, but like by the same token, really cool, and I want to try it and figure it out. But
Mhm.
then will I be bad at lancing? Will I lose my lancing skills?
No. No, I'm a hammer guy. When I want to kick ass and kill something, I use a hammer when I'm like, this is a
Mhm.
hard monster and I just want it dead.
Yeah.
But if I'm like going back and like grinding for materials or whatever, I'll like switch it up. I like the longsword. I like
Yeah.
the sword and shield. I like the lance
Mhm.
sometimes.
Mhm.
I want to dip my toes into the bow gun just because ranged
Yeah.
fighting is just like beyond me. I like to switch it up a lot. When I'm
Yeah.
just having, I like to keep a higher tier of each type of weapon, you know, on hand, just
Mhm.
so I can like, in case I want to switch it up, I can handle whatever
Sure.
threat I need to. We've covered this game pretty broadly and with a lot of depth. I feel like I feel like we've covered our bases pretty well, but there's
Mhm.
still like just kind of like some auxiliary nitpicks. Like we've mentioned these naming conventions a few times. Obviously, like we've said, Monster Hunter is a hard game. It's mostly for like core gamers. It's not a casual game for certain. Even like the
Mhm.
gameplay, the challenge of the gameplay itself, but also just like the way it sucks you in and keeps you playing,
Mhm.
like to get that next armor piece or that next weapon and or see that next monster is just like pretty addicting.
You're always one piece of material away from the next best item, and which requires another quest.
Right, exactly. That being said, with each subsequent entry, it does seem like Monster Hunter is trying to become more accessible. You know, like all
Mhm.
these streamlining the mechanics that we talked about is to
Mhm.
make it fresher and easier for people that want to try Monster Hunter for the first time.
Sure.
But something that doesn't help is these hundreds and hundreds of tutorial windows that pop
Holy
up
cow.
while you're starting the game through every dialogue tree before and after
Holy cow.
everything you do. When you pull your weapon out, it's like, here's how to use the weapon. When you run
Mhm.
up to a plant, it's like, here's what this plant does.
They're all paragraphs, dude.
Yes, it's a lot of reading, and
It's not like they're like A is attack, B is guard. It's like press A to then launch your attack against the monster, which
yeah,
watch out, it's gonna attack you back.
and
Press B to guard. Like
it's not just
it's
A. It's like hold R to charge up your attack, and then press A or B depending on what if you want to do a rising slash or a spinning slash. And but those spinning slash and rising slash are actually called whirlwind blades and rising upper and rising, and it has a description that's like rising upper can chain into whirlwind blade if your spirit gauge is all the way up on a Monday and the planets are aligned and you're eating lunch.
Uh-huh.
It's and those are just the weapons, but like we've said, like just things has weird names. Like it can't just be like an ant or a butterfly. It's a
Mhm.
bomber fly. It's an Alteroth. It's a quest where we like go collect these things. Felvine, and you're like, what the hell's a Felvine?
Yeah. Does
That's a
that grow
plant
in a
material.
tree or the ground?
Right. And like we said with like the grappling hook mechanic, it's called a wire bug, and these wire bugs allow you to do silk bind attacks,
Mhm.
which are a whole other thing. It's the terminology feels like it's never been more unfriendly, truly.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
more more newbie unfriendly in a Monster Hunter game, dare I say. It's pretty wild, especially with how it's presented with all those tutorial windows and just like the raw reading you have to do.
It's the vocabulary almost is what's
Yeah,
overwhelming.
absolutely.
They really expect you to have a knowledge of what they're talking about, it seems like, when you first start, which, yeah, isn't cool if you're getting started in this series.
It's very overwhelming. Like I was kind of overwhelmed still as like a veteran. I was like, I mean, I knew how to do all the things, but it was just like pelting me with information.
Well, how do they fix that? I mean, I would sit through a 30-minute tutorial, but then again, like, your class won't necessarily apply, like, you know what I mean? Like, what weapon you wanna use.
Mm.
Not everyone's gonna play the same play style.
So this is interesting because they've experimented with this before in like how
Mhm.
newbie friendly it is. Monster Hunter 3 was a great starting point. And I think
Mm.
that's part like that goes hand in hand with why it was on the Wii to be accessible.
Yeah.
Because it really did introduce you very slowly to everything about Monster Hunter. For example, like in Rise, in this one, you have one of each weapon type available to you from the beginning, like full stop. You can jump into any weapon in the deep end and just like go to town, dive
Right.
into it, learn about it, etc. In Monster Hunter Tri, you had to choose one to start with.
That's awesome.
It see it is. It's awesome, and it was cool because like over the story, it was like we just developed the switch axe, this new technology, And the first long
Uh-huh.
sword you get is like this from this character, and then you learn how to
Mm-hmm.
develop the long sword. And even the quests, like the whole 1-star tier of quests were all like tutorial quests teaching you how to
Mm-hmm.
play. And that
Mm-hmm.
was really great. It was a great starting point. But
Mm-hmm.
if that were to happen in Rise, for me, that would be incredibly frustrating. I wouldn't want to start the
Right.
game if the first 10 hours were going to be repeating the stuff that I already knew, right? If I had to
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
wait a few hours to get to the hammer that I want to use so bad, you know?
Right.
So it's just another difficult thing, you know. I appreciate in Rise that I, again, series vet, serving my duty,
Mm-hmm.
can just kind of jump in and kick ass as soon as I want. But you know, for new players that want to try Monster Hunter, all these menus and tutorials, it's pretty obtuse, abstract. So I don't really know what the solution is there.
It's funny. I was talking to my boss, who is just like an incredibly casual gamer,
Hmm.
particularly Nintendo, and he knew of Monster Hunter as the difficult game,
It's
as the hard game that will punish you.
one of the
And
OGs, baby.
that's right. But I don't know who. I'm thinking of my casual boss. I'm thinking of even my best friends who, you know, some of them are gamers, but I don't know who I could recommend Rise to if they hadn't played Monster Hunter before. Is that a too dramatic of a thought?
No, not at all. Broadly, I would recommend it if you like Dark Souls or if you liked Zelda Breath of the Wild in particular. Like if you like those
Mhm.
kinds of games. I would say if you like Xenoblade Chronicles. Xenoblade
Yeah,
Chronicles in its combat takes inspiration from Monster Hunter in a lot of
sure.
ways. It's a lot more automatic, I suppose, less actiony, but you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there are aspects to it. But I think as far as introducing someone cold turkey to Monster Hunter, I don't think Rise is the worst opportunity to do
Mhm.
so. But I think anyone that's diving in has to know that Monster Hunter is a long running franchise.
Mhm.
This isn't like a brand new thing. It's
Yeah.
rooted in tradition. You just have to be
They're gonna
aware of
have
that.
some layers that they're gonna have to cut through before they start
Definitely.
creating their own path.
Right.
Yeah,
But ultimately it's a rewarding experience.
absolutely.
It's tons and tons of fun.
Again, going back to kind of the gameplay loop, this is one of the first times I can recall just almost being like addicted to the experience.
Uh-huh.
It's just so satisfying. You are crushing these massive, beautiful monsters that usually the highlight of any other game. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, like
Like
the big boss.
yeah, and that's all this game is, and then if you are at all like a checklist kind of guy, like a collectibles kind of guy,
A
and I'm
completionist.
saying guy, a completionist, if you are this kind of person,
This game is
it'll
crack.
just yes, this game is crack, yes, it'll tickle this weird little spot in your brain that won't let go, and so,
Mhm.
if you've never played it before, you are going to be climbing a mountain for the first several hours. But, it'll be worth it if you are up for the challenge and it sounds fun. It's just
Definitely.
I feel dramatic saying, "Oh, I can't recommend this to anyone," but I just you do need to be prepared for what you're getting into. I think it's
It's
only fair because if you this ain't Mario, my friends.
something like that. Yes, I mean, it's a challenging game. That's just the plain and short of it. And if
Mhm.
you can come to grips with that, if you like challenging games, definitely give it a shot.
Yeah.
And going back, like you said, like when that switch flipped, like I think Monster Hunter 3 was like the first game that I ever put like several hundred hours into before.
Dude, you hogged the Wii
I sure
so
did.
freaking much. It was
Sure did.
crazy.
I bought a classic controller just for that game, baby.
I just I'm telling you, so if you've played Monster Hunter, you know what I'm talking about. The inventory screen is
Mhm.
made up of it's just dozens of tiny icons that mean nothing if you look at the icons themselves. I just remember Connor flying through menus and menus of these weird icons and then bashing the monster a couple times and then like running away and icons, 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 and boom, 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 icons, icons. And like that's what I remember seeing.
No, you're not wrong whatsoever. Like, to the layman, like I said, like, my roommates watch me. He's like, "So, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Why are you hunting this monster?" 'Cause
Hmm.
I'm a monster hunter, baby.
Come on, bro. Get on
Duh.
board.
I feel like we've I know I mentioned a lot of nitpicks, but, like, a lot of those nitpicks are, like, the streamlining problems for me, and
Hmm.
just, like, how to tackle those and, like, what the best way and, like, did they do it right? We've covered most of those bases that was intending to, I feel like. Can we get into, like, one mega super tiny insignificant nitpick?
That sounds like it really is bothering you big time, though.
If you are new to Nintendo Gems, I'm the resident composer. The theme song you have heard
Ish.
is my work. I'm kind of a music snob, sort of.
He is.
I'm yes, yes, but I'm not super well versed in music theory. So extremely tiny, nitpicky thing. There is one monster we mentioned called Zinogre. He's like my
Uh-huh.
favorite monster, probably. Introduced in 3
Wow.
Ultimate. He was the flagship monster of Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, and he has his
Mhm.
own theme. Something we haven't mentioned, like theming, game composition, video game music, theming and motifs in game music is my crack, is my bread and butter. We might have to do a special someday on just like video game music or like a particular dissecting certain games music or something someday.
100%,
But
yeah.
that's my meal. That's what I dine
Mhm.
on. And Monster Hunter has really good music. It's just like
Mhm.
really good, like bombastic orchestral stuff, like for when you're fighting these monsters. Generally, each map has its own battle theme. So like the volcano has like this kind of thing.
Mhm.
The tundra has like more twinkling pianos and like wind
Mhm.
noises. But some monsters like Zinogre have their own battle theme that like is iconic to them, endemic to their fight. And
That's sick.
It's super sick. And Zinogre's is awesome. And it has this one melody that plays at the top of it
Mhm.
that when he was first introduced in Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate goes something like this.
Cool, yeah, I'm
So
with you.
far, so good. So that's the main melody, but there's a harmony part that is associated with it. They changed the harmony from 3 Ultimate's
Oh.
version to Rise, and it's worse. And I'm not sure. I guess I'll start with Rise's
Uh-huh.
version, and then we can hear 3 Ultimates, and maybe you can hear an improvement. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Braden, maybe you can hear this. We kind of have the Weaver genes, the musical wherewithal audience. I'm sorry if this is annoying or weird or redundant or whatever, but maybe it'll be a nice little music lesson. But anyways, this is with the harmony that Rise added, right? Cool.
Very, very Zelda, like, pirates or something.
It's a little more minor. The chord isn't complete in the song, and I can't
Uh-huh,
like name the letter chord that it is, but
uh-huh.
it's ba 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 ba, a little more antagonistic. Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate's version, the original version, goes something like this.
Ooh!
It's like
It
more
is.
it's more
It's
upbeat. It's more like blood pumping.
Mhm.
It's more like yeah,
It definitely brings you higher. I mean, it's literally a higher
yeah.
note.
It's the
The
difference.
second one is better.
I appreciate that you agree, and I appreciate you giving me this time and space and appreciating it
Uh-huh.
because I mean it's the difference. I mean, video game composition, theming, yada 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 yada. There's a difference between making the player feel empowered and making them feel threatened. And
Mhm.
the first one I played, Rises, obviously it's all very subtle, but it makes you feel more threatened because
Certainly.
it's a little more antagonistic, it's a little more minor, the chord is a little more
Uh-huh.
obscured.
Feels darker.
Yes, exactly. But the second one, the one that was in original 3U, is more upbeat. It's more uplifting. It's empowering. It's two
Yeah.
major chords. It's like, yeah, I'm a hunter and I'm gonna hunt this thing. This is a
Mhm,
formidable
mhm.
foe, but like, I don't know. It's maybe I have problems. Uh,
No,
maybe
dude, don't
I'm
don't get
overthinking everything,
dude, you
but
definitely got problems, but
sure.
valid,
But
worthy of
separate
hearing
from this,
problems. Yeah.
right? So yeah, that's my little completely unnecessary music nerd lesson for the day. And I'll again mention my roommates. I like verbally reacted when I heard it the first time. I was like, "What? They
That's
changed
so
it!" And Kyle was like, "Whoa!"
that's
But yeah,
that's really funny. I feel like I've only fought the Zinogre once this time around this game, and
mhm.
so I'll definitely have to pay attention. I like the idea that some monsters do come with their own themes.
Oh,
I
it's
hadn't
awesome. Yeah.
realized that. Are the
Um,
themes from this game reused? Are any of the melodies or songs or did I really just pick up on the tunes from this game that quickly? Because I can whistle them along with the game, and I
mm,
feel like maybe they were from 4 or Generations, or even just, like, the Quest Complete song. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na.
it depends on what you're referring to. Like I said, some recurring monsters have their own themes that carry over from game to game, but get kind of like remixed and reorchestrated, which is kind of the case
Sure.
with Xenogres. The rest of
Mhm.
the rest of the Rise version of Xenogres theme is like pretty cool
Mhm.
and fits like the feudal Japan vibe, like lots of kotos and flutes and stuff is very cool.
Sure.
It's just the main melody that bothered me. But yeah, there's like there are common the Monster Hunter theme is like you know, it's
Okay.
that
Mhm.
like victory theme is been it was in 1, it was in 2, it was in 3. I think it was
Mhm.
in 4, but they do kind of like change it a little bit depending on the game, but the motif is like sort of there. It
Yeah.
suggests the original motif. So you're definitely not wrong.
Mhm.
And during the credit sequence, like after you fight like what is the quote unquote big boss and the credits
Mhm.
roll, there are more like subtle hints of like the Monster Hunter theme
Right, right.
sprinkled in, you know. So
Interesting.
you're not wrong.
Okay. That's fair
It's
enough.
there.
I do pick up like you said, we got some Weaver genes, we're fairly musical, and so we do pick up on melodies and tunes, fairly quickly, but
Mhm.
I was curious if I was really remembering from past games or not.
You're not all the way wrong, but depending on what song you're talking about, you're not all the way right either. Well, well, well. This has been quite the discussion.
Yes, it has, and I don't know.
Anything
We might have to like do another episode like in a couple months
like
after
down the
we've like
line?
yeah, like once we've like cleared. So I mean, I'm barely in the high rank
Mhm.
quest missions,
Same. Yeah, still got a long way to go.
which is quite literally when the game actually starts. It's like when it opens up, the
Mhm.
game doubles itself as soon as you clear the low rank and opens up high rank. It's wild. And I
Yeah.
didn't know there was G rank. You sent me a text the other day about G rank, and I've never heard of such a thing, but apparently it's real
Oh,
in some
yes.
games.
Right, yeah, I can't actually say for certainty that it's in this one. I can only assume it is because it usually is. Well, something that we can see, like, on all the menus and stuff is there is downloadable content planned for the future that they're not so subtle about, so I guess
Mhm.
we'll see. Maybe, I mean, they'll definitely keep updating the game, but maybe we'll see some new monsters and new content in, like, the relatively
Absolutely.
near future.
We obviously went hard on this game,
Mhm,
but in
and
this discussion
we've only just started too.
yeah, that's the thing, and so I feel simultaneously, like, satisfied with our conversation, but also, like, we're just leaving so many loose ends that deserve to be tied up, but we
Right.
would have to be here for another many hours.
Right, and we've also this is already shaping up to be, like, one of our longer episodes, no doubt. And then do we wanna cover a gem real quick or,
Oh, yeah,
how about,
perfect, let's
yeah, no, I think we've covered a suitable amount of Nintendo gaming for one episode, regardless.
yes, certainly.
Anything else you wanna tack on about it or close off with, besides hit it until it dies and don't get hit?
I like that a whole lot, that seems like a tattoo I need or something like that, like
Absolutely.
a life motto. But no, I do think I'm pretty rounded out here. If there's anybody listening that wants to play this game with us, please give us a shout.
Yeah.
this is kind of going to be an appeal to our social media again. You know, holler at us on Instagram, on Facebook, on Discord. I mean, we'd love to get together with you and smash some skulls. So
Yes, sir.
I think that would be pretty cool. And like I said, maybe there really will be another episode down the line if there's ever some significant DLC or anything like that. Otherwise, I think right now we'll have an episode in another week or two, I think, and then Pokemon Snap,
Yeah.
new Pokemon Snap comes out. So, we're gonna be around. We have a busy couple months ahead of us. So stay tuned to Nintendo Gems.
I need to finish my Magnamalos armor set, so if anybody can donate a plate or a tail, please do so. Hit me up.
Solid.
Other than that, you can check out my music on Spotify and at bandcamp.com. My stage name is Weave, W-E-A-V. Go to weave.bandcamp.com to listen to my stuff. You are listening to it right now probably as the outro song kicks in, so check it out.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us again for another episode of the Nintendo Gems podcast. I hope you've enjoyed our conversation on Monster Hunter Rise. I know I have. And on that note, we will see you next time. My name is Braden.
And I am Connor.
And this has been Nintendo Gems. Y'all have a good one.
Love you.